it's more nuanced. I would not just blankly tell everybody to go to college. I think that's the best way I can describe it for myself. If I want to make money, go to college. Like, again, very linear thought process.
Yo, B, let's go.
You may have seen the clip and maybe heard word of mouth, yet another podcast. Man, what could it be about? Is it truth or opinion? A couple of contradictions. We're here to challenge tradition and twist your vision. So we set on a mission to bring you rebel wisdom.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Rebel Wisdom. Super excited for you guys today. We will be talking about a topic here. I think it's going to be a good one versus going to college versus not going to college. We're going to share some ideas of what we think, and we're going to dive into maybe what you guys think and have a conversation about it. The overarching question, I think, with going to college and not going to college is how it sets you up after. Or if we look at it, the spectrum, maybe later in life, how going to college would set you up. I think the entering argument most people would default to is, hey, go to college. But if we really think about why we need to go to college, I don't know, I have some thoughts on it. Where do you think that narrative starts from, going to college?
I think in our generation, we're millennials. I'm teetering on that line, but just from what we've been taught from our parents as a career path to education-wise, middle school, high school, and what's after that, I think the natural default answers that a lot of people at least can relate to us in a way is that your parents say, hey, go get a college education, and that it just kind of left at that. And they don't explain, hey, go to college for X, Y, Z or anything. It's just an outstanding statement of going to college. And just kind of thinking about that point, that statement right there is so generic. And I'm just starting to question whether that is right for everyone or not.
Yes. I think you hit on something there, right for everyone. The individuality is kind of never taken into consideration when you're going to college. Everybody says, like you said, go to college because that's what everybody's done. And largely that's the narrative. Like, college equals getting job after. When I think we can argue now in 2024, that's not necessarily the case. I also think you said millennials, it's interesting. I think I don't know if millennials is the first generation, but the millennial generation, maybe plus or minus generation, we're the first era to kind of see computers, like the exit or the advancement of computers. And now you have what they call like the iPad kids, that people growing up with technology in their hands, literally from conception, like from being a newborn infant. And that might change the whole way they learn, like their whole lives. Like, we had a little bit of that, the generation before that didn't really have that. So I think that could also scope the necessity to go to college, or even at a minimum, how people learn.
We don't know how they're going to react, right? Because at least for the iPad generation, and I have a little brother, I think he's like 11, right? He since he was a two years old baby, he had an iPad in his hand and knew how to unlock passcode before he even knew how to speak.
Right.
And with all the social media popping up these days, especially Instagram, TikTok, and those like short form reels, they see that money, success that people are achieving very quickly. And I think it just sets the unrealistic expectation that, hey, why would I go to a 4-year college and do all these things? I don't want to say waste of money, but spend all this money for education, and what then, right? You're going to just slave away after a corporate job for 40 years. That's not what people want these days. And we'll see how that plays out in the next few years. And
definitely. Yeah. Okay, so with that, right, we talked about kind of some overarching philosophies, or maybe what we think. Let's drill down to, let's start with the pros of going to college, or, our opinions of what are some things that we think, hey, going to college is definitely good for this reason. One thing that I would like to bring up or submit is that, and I'm speaking from a place of, I am someone that is a college graduate. I actually went to a 4-year college. Prior to that, I did 1 year of preparatory school. So 5 years of college for background context. For me, college was a place that I learned to learn. I like to continue that today. I think we're both avid readers. We both read a lot. But learning how to learn, or how to digest material, how to digest literature, was one thing for sure. Like, I think high school, maybe I was a little too bit unserious. I like to think I was serious in high school, but I don't think that was the found like college solidified me learning how to learn and kind of learning my learning style. I think that's one thing. Can it be done outside of college? Absolutely, sure. But I think college provides that structure that, at least for me, speaking personally, helped me learn my learning style and how to learn. I don't know if you can relate to that or if you have something additional.
No, absolutely. No, I agree with you that on that. Another a pro, or I don't know if it's like a pro, but a
Yeah.
requirement to go to college is some of the jobs that you're gonna have to get. Some require
Yes.
absolutely that you need to have a 4-year degree, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to go into the higher end medical industry, like you have to have
You
that,
have.
right? You don't have an
Yes.
option to
Yes.
not go to college and become a doctor or dentist
Right.
or MP or a PA. And then me speaking personally, I commissioned into the United States Navy, and with that, I went through the ROTC route for those that are
Okay.
familiar, and you have to go to a 4-year college
Yep.
and to graduate with a scholarship to commission into the Navy. And yes, there are little nuances once you in the Navy
Always
that
are.
you don't have to get a college degree to become an officer. But
Mhm.
for my line that I went into inside the Navy, you have to have a college degree. So
Yes.
I think there are some requirements that you have to do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at this point, there's no way of getting around that. But that's something that I definitely do want to point out.
It's okay. I agree. And I think it's interesting how you're saying right now there's no way of getting around it. I was going to ask, do you think, right, for the technical career fields, probably lawyer or doctor, the big go-tos, your education is absolutely, probably a more formal education is absolutely a prerequisite. I don't think many people will argue that. But do you think jobs or maybe bigger corporations are going to shift away from requiring uh, a degree just based on the way that society is trending and with the age of information, or the ease rather of information, and it's just so accessible everywhere, that there will start to be like, you know what, there are other ways people can learn and become qualified for these jobs. Do you think
Yeah,
we'll see a shift?
I do see a major shift in the definitely in the next 5 to 10 to maybe 20 years.
Really?
Absolutely,
Okay.
for sure. And I think we have started to see that recently. I think you hear the everyday people, I think, including me, right? I hear
Hmm.
about it on news about in the big FANG companies, right? Like Facebook, Amazon,
Sure. Yeah.
Apple, Microsoft,
Yeah.
Google, those top tier, major, high cap
Yeah.
companies. They're trying to optimize their business to get the best candidate for their company. And they may not necessarily have a college degree. I don't work for them, so I don't
Yeah.
know how the interview process goes. But if I was in that level of mid to senior level management,
Mhm.
I wouldn't personally care if the best software programmer in the country had a degree or not.
You and me both. I don't know if that's just us, but I agree.
What's
Yeah.
important from trying to look through their lenses, the ability to code, which you can't. The only way to prove that is either
True.
through a degree, right? Or you can present a portfolio of the
Yes.
work that you have done in the past. And then me going through college, there's a lot of wasted time in college,
There is.
right? If
Yeah.
I really just focus down, for me, I got a mechanical engineering degree.
Yep.
If I just narrowed down on the mechanical engineering degree, I could have probably finished in 2 years instead of
100%.
taking four, and a lot of people take 4.5, or 4 and a half, and even 5 years for engineering degrees. So, absolutely, definitely see a shift, and it makes sense. Um, if you're a high level, top tier company, that having a college degree means doesn't really mean much anymore, and they're just trying to get that top level talent.
Yeah. It's
And
almost checking the box. Yeah. Just like is it becoming a arbitrary requirement, right?
mhm,
With that shift, though, kind of like you're saying, for the length of college, it's something I kind
mhm,
of just thought about. Maybe we see a shift that college, is still a thing, but maybe it's not typically 4 years.
mhm.
Now, obviously, some people do 5 years now, some people do 2 years now, 3 years, whatever. But maybe like the norm will become a short period of time for college. Like, again, just kind of interesting topics to play with and see. One more thing I want to submit as as a possible advantage to college or pro as we're calling it is the resources. I think going to a traditional college or university, everything is right there. Like it is an institution for learning. So you have the libraries, you have maybe digital libraries, teachers that are certified in these subject matter experts in these topics, qualified to teach. Whereas if you took a path to learn on yourself, you may have to obviously do your own research to even figure out where to get the books, where to go online, reach out to somebody to get your own tutor or your own person. I do think that is something that may not be as talked about too for a advantage of going to college is just simply the resources that they have there.
Yeah, okay, I feel that. Okay, just yeah, I understand because it would be hard to, at least for my material science class. For I took a class on aluminum, right? For example, not a lot of tutors will be able to answer like, hey, how does aluminum when you bend at this force and you bend it three times in a row with this coefficient of whatever all this stuff is like, how does that work? And probably that master level student or the PhD professor is the qualified person to answer those questions. And I understand that it is definitely geared to help the student succeed if the student is looking for it. And vice, you can learn all the stuff from a textbook on your own, but it's just having the drive on your own to actually figure it out on your own. And then another thing is that it does give you the credibility. Me saying that I took this class on my own versus having a documented paper that says, hey, he took this class and got a 97 on it, it definitely does. Yeah, it definitely does give credibility to your name, whether you like it or not. That's just a fact.
Dude, I completely agree. I know, speaking on the textbook side of things, I myself, not a textbook guy. Like, hey, if I got somebody, can you please sit me down? Can we walk through it? I mean, you've known me long enough. You've helped me with so many things. Like, I need to be explained. If I can't see it or experience it myself, I am 95% of the time trying to sit down with somebody and have it explained that way. So, yeah, again, it's kind of, I don't want to say what floats your boat, but it's the individuality of it. What's not, that narrative of like, hey, you need to go to college. I think is subsiding.
On averages, right? Because college experience is gonna differ from person to person, obviously.
Absolutely,
But when
absolutely.
you look at the major macro trend of just taking a random person on the street,
Hmm.
college versus no college, the likelihood of the college educated person making more from their W-2 job is tends to be higher. And I think that's been documented in so
Yes.
many researches, statistics. It's just the way it is. And I think that just, again, the employers just seeing this person, it's like, hey, I got this person A, college, person B, no college. And with no other context, I would also go for that person that is at least college
Most
educated
would. Yeah.
without knowing anything else. And then they're going to demand a higher salary because of that. Whether they provide more value or not, you don't know.
So you're saying it's almost like a bargaining
But
chip, which could be another pro to going
yeah,
to college.
right. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes,
As,
because like once you do get a higher paying job, it is much easier to leverage that to get higher paying jobs, higher
right.
than what you're already making, right? And
Yes.
I think it may not it will it may just shorten the path to get to the higher salary quicker just by having a credential on college or master's or PhD.
Right. Do you have any other? I think those are most of the ones I can think of as far as advantages of going to college. Do you have any other ideas on that front? Or I wanted to pick your brain and see what we could think of for not going
No,
to college.
just from the college, just the general statement of college without considering the individual their experience. Yes, I think we covered majority of the pros. I'm sure there are
Yeah.
hidden things that like you also got to think traditionally you go from high school to college
Hmm.
if you go to college, and that's the first time that you are most likely living away from the home that you grew up in
Great point.
from 18
Yes.
years. So I personally seen very smart people, much, much, much
Mm-hmm.
smarter than me. They just didn't succeed in college just because of the outside environments that they were, placed upon. They have to think about their own food, right?
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
to, if they don't have money, they have
Family.
to go work. Uh, your family's not there. The emotional support may not be there. So that's also, it. I wanted to phrase it as a pro. It definitely sounded negative, but that also
Mm-hmm.
could set you up better as, like, hey, after high school, you're living with your parents. Nothing wrong with that, but just taking a little tiny step to go away from your parents to
Yes.
experience life a little bit on your own, right? You don't have
100%.
a curfew anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that might be another beneficial thing that, you're just not thrown into the real world just yet, but that little intermediate or the middle step to
yeah.
eventually ultimately get to that point.
That's a good point. Using college as like a transition period, as
Hmm.
I think most do, into the real world. I know, again, this is not true for everybody, but when you talk to a lot of people about, hey, college years, college experience, I think one thing that's typically brought up is like partying. Like people, you do a lot of things in
Hmm.
that era and that time in your life that you kind of get out of your system, you go through, and like I said, use it as a transition into adulthood, like solidified adulthood. However, whoever wants to define that. Um, again, that is, and a lot of these I think are interesting because we're talking about advantages or pros of going to college, and they don't even have to do with the education itself. But it could be a transition period. Just to summarize, like it's like the resources, again, the structure of how to learn, like all these, the getting you a better job on the end, and this isn't even touching on the fundamental reason that a college or institution is created, which is like to teach. There's all these other reasons. So yeah, I mean, and which is why people have been going to college for years. Obviously, there's a process to it. There is an end state. It is there for a reason. But as we're bringing up, could this be changing? Is there a shift? I don't know. I guess only time will tell. So if we flip the script, flip into the other side, talking about, hey, why might someone not want to go to college, or yeah, what justifies not going to college? I think the number one, it's almost comical, like thing when anybody thinks of, I don't want to go to college, money. Like nobody, the dreaded like college debt. You know what I mean? Like sure, it's if you can avoid a large lump sum of debt like that, great. It sounds good at face value, but I mean anything of that, it's such a I mean, again, speaking standardly, 4 years of your life, for consistent education, like it's going to cost a lot. We all know that. Sure, it varies per schools, but like you said, it's likely going to be upwards of $100,000 going to these colleges. So I think it makes. I can understand why someone wouldn't want to take on that debt willingly.
Yeah, and it just the costing is so crazy because at least when I was 18, so I think my total tuition, I believe it was around, yeah, I would say like low six figures, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I didn't, luckily I had a little bit of savings. So I didn't finance all of it, but I think I
Yeah.
financed about 70 grand of it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of crazy to think that as a, when I was 18, I didn't have a grasp of
Well,
what 100K or a 70K. I
absolutely
didn't
not.
understand what that meant. Yeah, like
It
that's
is
just a
so
number
wild.
on a paper. Yeah, you can do
Yeah.
math on it, but you just don't have that concept yet.
Yes.
And then traditionally speaking, the pro that we brought up that you make more money after going to college as a
Hmm.
generic statement, not true for everyone, right? But the thought is that, okay, like I'll take on this debt, and then because I'll make more, I can pay it off, right?
Yes. Yes.
And it just, that's still such a crazy concept, is because it's the only loan where an 18-year-old with no life experience, like a real, I'm talking real life experience,
Yeah.
with
Like car
no
wash or
income,
something. Yeah.
no no promise of making X amount of dollars, is able to get a loan for tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars that they cannot even bankrupt out of. They're stuck for life. And that's crazy to me.
It's a lot to think
Uh,
about.
and I remember when I was applying for my student loans, like I did not get denied. And
Mm.
now I'm in the, I'm buying um, houses, and I got to the point where I can't even get a loan anymore because they're like, oh, like even though your real estate's making money,
Yeah,
we
you're
can't give you a
doing
loan
okay.
because of all these things.
Exactly.
But they turn around to the 18-year-old and be like, hey,
Like, here you
here's
go.
100K. Yeah,
Yeah.
ready to go to school, right? So that's, ah, I don't want to say predatory, but
Mm.
it almost seems that way just because you're taking, not that, I don't want to say 18-year-olds are dumb. They're not dumb.
They're just not simply not
Most of
experienced.
them are more naive
Yes.
than a 30-year-old adult,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So having the responsibility to make that decision at such a young age, relatively, it's uh,
It's a lot.
I don't know.
Hence,
I don't think that's a good idea for anyone.
yeah, and you can, in theory, they have their parents with them that they're gonna help talk them through it. Again, some people are on good terms with their parents. Everybody's story is different, but speaking on average, yeah, you would have people kind of coaching you through the process, and like you said, sure, there's financial aid, there's scholarships you can get to offset the cost of going to college, but by and large, yeah, 18-year-old student, mind you, like for me, I never worked a job in high school, so I had not much of a cushion or um, again dealing with money. Like if I'm looking at that much money I'm taking on, I can't even conceptualize those numbers. Like you said, it's such. I'm like, this is something I hear about in movies, like $100,000. Like you're like, at that age, you're like, what is that? Like, you can't even really fathom it. Um, so it is certainly a lot for somebody fresh out of high school to think about and go in and make that decision. Um, Also, I wish I was more knowledgeable in it, but I know other countries they operate differently. Not to go into that's probably like inner workings of governments and whatnot, but you would like to think there is another way. Like education is something that there has to be some level of work. There has to be some level of self drive and motive to pursue that. But you would like to think like that's something kind of like healthcare or like the right to good health. Like that's something you would hope everybody could have access to at some reasonable rate. Um, so again, it's kind of something interesting to think about on a reason not to go to college.
Yeah. So while we're on the topic of student loans and the cost and the finance side of it, right? I want to bring up the topic of the return on your investment on that $100,000 that invested, right? So for context, so I was very lucky. I wasn't there was no strategic plan that got, you know, during college and early years of my W-2 corporate life. I didn't have a plan. I just kind of fell into it. And I got my mechanical engineering degree, and how that came about, I wasn't a I wasn't going into a mechanical engineering degree at first. So I went into college, and then I was interested in doing ROTC, and then you have to get a scholarship to commission. It's like, all right, like what do I need to get a scholarship? And they said, hey, there are things called tier one majors, and gives you a list of whatever all this stuff, and then all the hard majors. They are hard majors, right? That's in tier one, and one of them was mechanical engineering, and all my buddies were mechanical engineers. Like, all right, like I'll just go to that class, whatever, just kind of hang out. Uh, and by the time I was like a junior, it's like, oh, I really don't like this, but if I have to change, I might have to do another year, and I can't afford that, right? And I didn't like school. I didn't want to stay in school for another year. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna just tough it out and then just graduate in the next 2 years. And thankfully, the mechanical engineering degree has helped me get a decent paying job relative to my peers. But I'm just thinking about all the people that just didn't fall into it, right? And I really don't mean any offense, but I do mean this. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I do mean it at the end of the day. Like, you go get an art degree, like what did you just do? Uh, what? Maybe I'm just not understanding the bigger picture in I'm gonna say art because everyone talks about like all the art degree, right? But what what do people with art degrees do? I still don't I'm about to push 30. I don't understand what they do. Maybe I'm just ignorant. I don't know. But I feel like I would have heard something if it was like a great career choice to make a lot of money. And right, it's not a money thing for everyone. Maybe they just like art, which I would tell them, dude, if it's your passion, why did you go to school for it? Just do it full time, right? So that's just crazy to me. And some of the career fields that have we talked about doctors, lawyer, all these specialized fields needing a degree. I understand that, but when you look at teachers is a good example, right? From my understanding, I believe you have to have a 4-year degree to be a I don't know, like a high school teacher, right? And I I love my high school teachers, and I still talk to a few, not every day, but maybe like once or twice a year. I really mean the best for them, but they do not get compensated well for what they do. They are teaching the next generation of our people. It makes sense that they need to get educated to teach. And yet, how much are they clear on average? Like 45K, 50K? I don't know. Maybe 60? I don't think it's higher than 70 or 80, but how long is that 100K take you to pay down? It's usually like 20 years, right? Yeah, it just doesn't make sense mathematically to take on such a large debt to get into a career field that, just gets compensated so much less
Yeah.
than other majors.
That's it. That is interesting. So, right, for the potential teachers out there, like what? Because right now, if it right, you said it's very linear. Like if you want to be a teacher, have to go to school. But to your point, again, in my strong personal opinion, they're highly underfunded, undercompensated, if you will.
Hmm.
But like, you can't become a teacher like on your own. So it's almost like they have to go to school, which is why I say
Hmm.
like bless the hearts of any teacher. I do think more largely to speak on your point that return on investment. I don't think, and I don't know if this is what you were getting at, but like I don't think it's more on the entry level as you're entering college. I don't know if it's as heavily considered. So I got a bachelor's in economics, pretty broad, like not specified. But there's some transferability there. Like it kind of translates in some degree. But like you said, like per your degree, like what's your return on investment? Are you saying like people should kind of think about that more, like as they go into college, like what can I tangibly do with this degree that I'm pursuing? Is that kind
Yeah.
of what you're
So
saying? Yeah.
no. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Should they do that? Yes,
Right.
absolutely. They should do that, right?
Yeah.
But that's hard for an average 18-year-old to do. Just
Right. Yes.
I'm
To
just
your
I'm
point.
just going through my experiences. Okay, let's say you took out 100K just to make we've been using 100K this entire time, so
Yeah.
we'll keep it 100K, and you go get a degree. Like for example, my sister,
Mm-hmm.
right? My sister is a junior in high school,
Yep.
and she's gonna be a senior. Like, hey, you got to start thinking about school,
Mm-hmm.
and she
Mm-hmm.
is. And then we talked about what kind of degree that she wants to get.
Yeah.
So she's like, "Oh, I think my major is going to be international business." So I mean, I've heard the degree before, but I don't know what they do. So we did a quick Google search, and is
Mm-hmm.
Google searches reliable? Maybe not, but it's just somewhere to get started, right?
Yes.
But the average international business graduate coming out of school across all United States, so it's going to be California's going to make a little bit more than
Right. Yeah.
Idaho, right? The average was like 35K or something like that.
Yeah.
I told her, I was like, hey, knowing from how much I don't live a crazy lifestyle, I try to live modestly, right? But if you make 35K a year with student loan, I mean, she's gonna hopefully she gets a cheap car that she can pay cash,
Yeah.
right? even with that lifestyle with rent, you're gonna have to get a roommate,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're not gonna live a fun life,
Yeah.
right? Just
Not
because
not
you're
by
gonna
most
be
people's
chasing
standards.
paycheck to
Yeah.
paycheck,
Yes. No,
and
absolutely.
then you'll be lucky to go up to Chipotle on the weekend because you are so broke on
Yeah.
how to, right? And then as a fresh college graduate, you want to grind and you want to show off at work, and I get
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yes.
But when they come home, they're not gonna be like, okay, like I'm excited to cook. No, they work their asses off all day,
Yes.
and they're gonna want to get something to eat. And like, look, you can't afford that. I am trying to persuade
Mm-hmm.
her to go into a higher paying field that she can also find passionate in,
Nice.
because I think it is very rare for people to have one passion and one passion only.
Or at least so young. Like it takes people years to conceptualize like what their like true passion. Yeah. Yeah.
Something I do want to bring out too is there's a book. It's called "So Good That They Can't Ignore You." I forgot the
Mm,
name of the author. I think it's a
okay.
Cal or something. I forgot his name,
Okay.
but he talks about, you think you are taught in life that there's this natural thing that you're meant to do in your life. It's like, oh, because I like this, I want to get into this career field or whatever,
Sure.
right? But what he argues is that it's not that there's this magical, perfect career or a job or whatever for you. That doesn't really exist. Where satisfaction at the workplace comes, your autonomy level. So you're not micromanaged. Every single day, you have some sort of freedom and autonomy, and that's going to come with experience and your level knowledge and things like that. And another thing is like, just when you get to that job, if you're respected at your job and you're good at what you do, you're gonna naturally tend to like what you do more. So I work in the semiconductor industry, and so we make computer chips and whatnot. And there's a lot of they call them process engineers, but
Mm-hmm.
they're a chemical engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hey, like, why don't you? I was like, hey, why don't you look into engineering? She was like, oh, I'm not gonna like it. I was like, well, you don't know that, right? You don't
How
know
do you
that
know?
you're not gonna
Yeah.
like it. That's fine. But like, but there's so many types of engineering that, like, the chances are you'll like something. And she was like,
Likely.
"What kind of sciences do you like?" She was like, "Oh, I like chemistry." Like, okay, so how about you become a chemical engineer? She's like, "Oh,
Mm.
I don't think I'm gonna like that." It's like, you don't know that, but you think that you like international business, but you also don't know that.
And I'd be curious, like, to ask her what like why international business? Like, what made her lean towards that route? Even like, did she just hear
And
something?
so I
Or
did ask her. So what she wanted to do was she wants to travel. She loves to travel.
okay,
We're a
good for her.
military family, so we
Awesome.
moved around multiple
Yeah.
times, and she wants to continue that. I
Okay.
was like, but there's ways to travel outside of getting the degree in international business.
And to your point, like, if you get a degree, if you can make some more on the back end post college, like, you can it'll open up your opportunities to travel more. So it's kind of ironic.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then with having the financial stability of some kind, like, you might be living that typical middle class life, like one or two vacations a year. I was like, look, if you're making 35K by yourself, single, I don't think you're going to be traveling that much besides your job. And it just dependent on the job, you might not even travel ever. The consideration for the ROI thing is big for me. Overall, I do support the idea of more education. I'm not saying
Hmm.
that I support college. I'm not saying that. I'm not taking a stance on that. I'm just trying to talk about it.
Yes, but you're also not saying you don't support college.
No,
Right.
exactly.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
don't stand heavily on either side, but
Yeah.
I understand that education is very important,
100%.
formally or informally,
Yes.
right?
Great.
And
Very
then
well said.
if they choose the route to go to college and get the formal education, might as well make sure that you're going to be like well off financially, taking the chance, increasing your odds.
So looking at the return on investment, I think there's always a difficult intersection on when somebody's going to college because you always hear like follow your passion. If you're doing what's fun or what you like, it's not work. How tangible though are these actual things? Like if you go to college, right, and you're chasing your passion or what you think is your passion, again, these are young kids, that's likely to change. I didn't know what my passion was. I kind of let my degree and my experience in college form my post life. I took a very unorthodox path, but form what I was doing post college. But if you just tell somebody like, oh, like do what you love, I think it's more nuanced than that. And then also, so let's say somebody graduates post college, they got a degree in something, that they thought they liked. So I want to circle back on one of the points you said. Finding your dream job, I can't put a number or statistic to it. I think it's few and far between. I think I think passion and hard work goes a long way. Hold high regard to people that are like truly just like relentless effort and like work very hard. If you're just chasing your dream job, I think there has to be some level of realism there. So again, to reiterate your point, if you can find something, I don't know about you. Most things I'm good at, I enjoy, at least to some level of degree. I don't know many people that are good at something. It's like, I'm like really good at this. Like, I'm crushing it, but like, I don't like it. If you can become good at something, like truly commit to it. Again, like you said, be respectable, be likable. Most jobs are it's a people's business. Like we are humans and we're gonna interact frequently. Like be enjoyable to work with, be reasonable, but then develop your skills at that job, which is going to loop into something else I want to talk about, and foster that competency. You're going to become good at it, and you're going to develop a like. Now, this might not work for every job, or nobody's going to come out of college, get in one job, and that's going to be the job they retire in. Again, unlikely, and that's okay because that's not even the norm. But I think for people to chase their absolute dream job, and I'm not here to extinguish anybody's dreams. Like by all means, shoot for the stars. But again, from a realistic standpoint, I think that it's so lofty to me. Um, and with that too, there's OJT, which is what I found since I've been in the workforce is on the job training. Like stands for a lot. So these degrees we're talking about, oftentimes, if you can find a way into a job or even hone a skill set, there's other ways to learn like apprenticeships, internships, um, like online class, like whatever. If you can hone a skill, again, it comes down to hard work and like dedication, and dedicate yourself to a craft. You can become self-made, or even you go to college, but like really hone in on a certain skill or aspect, and then the rest is on the job training. For what I do, oh man. So I graduated from the Naval Academy, right? So being in the military, again, hard to put a percentage on it. A large, overwhelming part of what we did was on the job training.
I do want to ask how many times you use a concept that you learned in thermodynamics or calculus 2 in your everyday, not even every day, ever, ever in your Navy time in the Navy? Zero.
Big zero.
Absolute
Big fat zero.
zero. No, you don't use the stuff
Yeah.
that you learned. You may recall some things like, oh, I remember
Right.
doing
You're right.
this. But are you going to be able to recite off how to solve this problem that you encountered in college that you were given an equation sheet
Not
for
I.
to solve?
Not
You,
I. Yeah.
I'm not, it's,
It's not
and so
happening.
I mean, I'll counter myself with that is that I don't use any of the things that I learned black and white in college in today's world or just in my
Okay.
job and all
And you're in an
my,
engineering job, which aligns with your
right.
major. Yeah.
Right. Aligns with my major. And then my side hustles, nothing. Zero. Right. The only thing I do want to give credit to is just the critical thinking portion of going to college. And you talked about it very minutely in the beginning is college is a place for you to learn. Right. And then what I learned in college is how to think critically outside the box because you know, for example, I think a lot of people can relate. I think a lot of people took calculus one. I'm guessing like a third or more people that went to college took calculus one. And
Okay.
calculus one,
Buy that.
I do like the topic, but it was very. I didn't get a good grade at all. Right,
Hmm.
I passed, but I didn't do well. I really enjoyed it, but there's a lot of pattern recognition and things that you have to think about that you kind of learn and you're trying to manipulate the equation just so that things cancel out to ultimately get your answer. And that way of thinking definitely helped me out in the Navy and definitely helped me
Oh
out
yeah.
on the everyday job that I do today, and especially in my real estate business, I definitely think about how can I optimize. Uh, not just put the 20% down and buy a long
Yeah.
term rental. There's no critical
Yeah.
thinking involved in that, and because of that, there's not too much money in that side,
Hmm.
right? But trying to think outside the box and how can I generate the most um, gross revenue on this property, and things
Hmm.
like at my job, like, hey, they're experiencing this kind of a problem. How can I solve that? And I do want to give credit to um, colleges for teaching, or I guess not even colleges, but the classes that I took
Okay.
to um, help me in that regard.
Talking about these intangibles of college
Hmm.
that don't have to do directly with education, which you could find outside of college, but you have things like extracurriculars as well. Or just, I think there's a lot to be had in diversity. Going to a school, a known place where you just have students, a student body comprised of people from all over the place. Just the difference of diversity in thought, diversity in race, the whole nine. Like I said, extracurriculars, other things you can do that will help foster your educational experience. Where again, if you're learning by yourself, it's kind of just you battling the textbook or you battling the computer screen to figure out what your professor's trying to teach through the screen. Um, so again, it's such an interesting dichotomy between college and not college, which I think I stand with you. I am 100% for education and the continuation of education, but it's more nuanced. I would not just blankly tell everybody to go to college. I think that's the best way I can describe it for myself. I
No,
simply
right.
I wouldn't.
It may do more harm than good depending on the path that you take, but it's so irresponsible as I don't I don't know the right word for this, but as a society or the middle class or some
Hmm.
subset of the country blanketly telling you to go to college. I think that's very irresponsible. And I've seen personal friends that struggle to make student loan payments,
Hmm.
and I don't know. Would they have done better if they didn't go to school? I don't know,
Maybe, yeah. We'll
but
never know, but it's something to think about. Um,
mhm.
yeah, going against there's that the rebel wisdom, right? Like kind of going against the norm and what everybody blankly says. And you know me, and we talk oftenly. So one thing I'll often like say, or at least in our conversations, is like why? Like what's the why behind doing something? And they go back to somebody 18-year-old or somebody fresh out of high school. They might just be going because they want to pursue a higher education, and that's kind of it's not more formulated than that. They're just like, hey, I know I want to learn. I gotta kind of figure out what my major is. I didn't know my major going into college, and that's fine. But if somebody in that person's life, that young person's life, can kind of instill in them not only to get a higher education, because again, that could be college or not college, but what's your why behind learning something? I think that could give clarity to the person pursuing whatever you want to be. Again, if you want to be a very skilled job, a carpenter or something, there might be a trade school or there might be somewhere you can go and you can pour into carpentry and you can become the best carpenter. And again, hone that skill. And if you want it bad enough, you can climb the ladder that way. If you know, because again, people go to college, you might get a degree, and it could not even correlate to what you do post college. And again, not everybody's going to know what they want to do upon entry, but the more clarity you have, I just think the better off. So I would say like if you know your why going to college, that because like we're saying it's not, and you always hear the cliche term about like college isn't for everybody, and I agree with that. I truly don't think it's for everybody, but that can help you decipher is college for me or not, or if you don't know like why am I going to college, like somebody who really knows like why am I going, and there are other reasons too. Some people go for sports actually, which we haven't really talked about, and then the education kind of comes separately. So, but if that's their why, I think they'll have clarity in knowing at least like that's why they started going to college. And nowadays there's ways to that can help both scholarships or maybe an NIL deal. There's ways that could potentially help pay for college. But I think if not knowing your why, pursuing your why for college, really anything. This is something I try my best to stand by. I only think it can help in gaining that clarity on.
If someone sat me down when I was 18, I probably probably wouldn't have given you a good answer on my why. But now looking back, that probably should have helped in the direction that I wanted to go. And it's so hard because when I was 18, I had no idea what I wanted to do, or where I wanted to go in life. But yeah, you brought up some skill trade or just trade jobs in the past conversation you just had, and I do want to bring that up, right? Because I think it's so overlooked in our country, and I know it could be very lucrative to get into that field. And now that I'm in the real estate side, I deal with a lot of trade people, right? Electricians, plumbers, uh, the roof guy, general contractors. Yeah, all of those people, you do not have to go to college for that, right? Okay, sure, you have to a trade school, right? Trade school is much shorter and much cheaper, right?
Yeah,
You're not gonna
you know
have
what
to.
you're learning a skill. Yeah.
Yeah, like in my mechanical engineering degree, like I had to learn about like the ancient civilizations, which was actually I kind of like that class, but like
Yeah.
what like that did nothing towards my
Yeah.
to get that degree. And at least for the tradespeople, they get to that trade school very relatively pretty quick, and then you might have to go to apprenticeship and whatnot.
Yep.
But once you get through all that training, on the job training, education, and whatnot, you do pretty well, depending on the amount of work that you do. And the one caveat is it's usually backbreaking work, right?
Yes.
So it may be harder on your body over time. But I do want to also counter that with saying some people sit in a cubicle for 40 years and that's going to destroy their back,
Can't be
and
good.
they absolutely hate it, right? They
I'm
go
no doctor, but
crazy.
it can't be good.
Right. And the mental side is just as tough on your body as the physical side, right?
Mhm.
And so I do, and it's not like when you're 18, at least where I grew up, it could be different. I don't know, in the Midwest. I don't know. You grew up in the Midwest. I didn't. When I was going to school, it's not a sexy thing to say, like, yo, like you should be an electrician. Like
Right. Yeah.
that's the
Nobody.
path,
Exactly.
man. Like
Which is probably
that's
why it's not
not
as talked
some.
about.
I hear what some electricians make, and I'm like, you made it last year? I'm like, yeah. I'm
Hmm.
like, good for you. Like, I'm
Yeah.
really like, that's inspiring, right? Because at least when I was in high school, a lot of the people that they're like, oh, I'm not going to college. It was like, dude, okay, maybe I might be overreacting, but like, oh, dude, like your life's over, bro. Like, you're not gonna get
Exactly.
anywhere.
It's not.
But that is
Yeah.
so far away from the truth, right? And like I said, a lot of people just don't gravitate towards that industry to begin with. But like we talked about, both of us said it. When you're good at something, you're gonna enjoy that more. You just naturally tend to enjoy that more. So, so it just, I don't think you should throw away the trade industry as a whole just because
I don't think anybody should.
it doesn't it looks hard or whatever the
Right,
case
right,
is.
right. Or it's more manual labor. And I think a caveat of everything we're saying is we're not saying like, hey, go to college or like don't go to college and disregard your future and education's out the window. No, if you're not going to college, there still needs to be some intensity behind looking for ways to educate yourself. Or like we're saying, apprenticeships, trade schools, uh, any other way to foster education. Like we're just stating that there are other ways. Like I just don't want that to get confused. But
Right.
there,
And yeah, and right now looking at our I don't is it the economy or the job industry, right?
yeah,
We're I don't know. I don't know what the correct terminology is, but this century or the last 10 years or whatever, like we gravitated not gravitated, but there's a lot of opportunities for gig work, right? Or the side hustles that everyone talks about.
yeah, yeah.
And I can't think of one side hustle that I've been part of that required a college degree, right? For example,
That's the beauty.
I know this one guy. right? It's not very often, but his entire job, he just drives an Uber, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah.
and it's kind of cool to just observe and talk to him because he works 15 days. He works half the month. He drives Uber for 15 days straight, all day. After the 15 days over, he has enough money to cover his bills
Mm.
and he just hangs out until the next month, right?
Doesn't sound terrible to me. I mean, yeah.
So, I mean, me looking at it is like, okay, like that doesn't really build a cushion for a lot of savings,
Yes.
investments,
Yes.
retirement, medical,
Yes.
whatever, right? But when you talk to him, he doesn't care about that. It's not right or wrong. It's just how he wants to live. And you can't say that, oh, you're wrong. That's not how you want to
Yeah.
live. No, you can't say that. If
Sounds
he's
like the guy knows his
actually
why.
happy with that, then right.
Yeah.
So with the gig work side, I had my 9 to 5, and after work I will drive Uber. I would go deliver Instacart groceries and do DoorDash and things like that because my why was I want to get that cash so I can translate it into assets. Just seeing those gig jobs, you can do it anytime you want on your own schedule. And I mean, if you can be efficient about it, sure, you're not, most of the time, you're not going to be clearing 6 figures unless you're working constantly. But depending on your financial circumstances, you might live an okay life. And if you're okay with that, then who's to say that you can't do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's your
And
life.
it doesn't even have to be your entire job. It could just be to supplement your income, just because your main job doesn't pay what you desire to be paid.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You brought up so many things that have just become common terminology amongst our generations. To name a few, Uber, Instacart. One thing I just recently got hip to is like Turo or Airbnb,
Mm,
like renting out your house,
right,
renting out your
right.
car. There's so many things to monetize or that are just that exist that you can be a part of, such as the things we just named. That and this is maybe a full circle moment. Let's rewind time. Let's say 50 years. My parents hope they don't get too mad at me. I'll say they're in their low 60s, right? When they were coming up, no Uber, no Instacart, no. All of these ways to make money purely didn't exist. So what are they taught? They're taught, hey, if I want to make money, go to college. Like again, very linear thought process, and almost due to a lack of options. If we're being honest, they just simply didn't have as many options as we are. As the world evolves, I think this rebel wisdom, as you and I like to call it, as the podcast is named, becomes more relevant in the fact that you can do things that are that are that deviate from what is traditionally taught because tradition. I mean, tradition might be a bad word, but like historically, what the options that were there, that pool is just grown, like simply.
Mhm.
So, like you said, you have your 9 to 5 job, and then you have a side hustle or the gig job, as you called it, that you use that money specifically for investments to make other money, and it just creates this amazing cycle of you're building these revenue streams because there are more ways to do it. Now, was like real estate around again when my parents were probably college era and stuff? Yes, and that's one industry that you and I both dabble in. But there's so many other things that exist. You think they were listening to podcasts? No way. They were, which is a way, if somebody is perfects their craft, could monetize, or even just a way to get information out or to receive information. So that one's kind of twofold. But there was just less ways for them to get information and less ways for them, options for them to make money. And I say all this to say they grew up a certain way, they being, again, I'm using my parents' generation for just ease of comparison. And they're preaching the best thing they know. Me and my dad frequently talk about like, I don't have a kid, just to put that on record, but most parents, I think I'm safe to say, I think I can speak for most parents. Most parents just want their kids to have things better than they did, like pretty standard, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing. Like, why would I not want my kid to be better off than us? So, in thinking that, they're like, hey, we were grown up, they were raised, college is the way to go. That's the way to maximize your return on investment. That's the way to get a job. preferably a high paying job, whatever you constitutes a high paying job, due to that time period, whatever. But so of course they're going to pass that down and they're going to teach that knowledge. But what I think you and I have seen a lack of is just that the exploration of the other path, um, the quote unquote path less chosen, as a lot of people would say. And I just think we're saying, hey, let's explore that a little bit. Let's talk about it. There's, there could be some benefits in that, especially when you look at kind of how we talked about today, the individuality. Like it's different for everybody. Everybody's passion's different. Everybody's why is different. Everybody's resources or where they come from. Sure, if somebody is a little bit more financially well off, and college isn't that much of a financial burden, coupled with maybe they know what they want to study, yeah, college could be a great option for you. But one thing I just want to reiterate is that there are more options, and now as we progress in society, possibly better options. Who knows?
No, absolutely. I think you hit on two major things that we're going through in today's age. We're in the information age, right? And that information travels faster than any prior period in history. Information travels so fast, and because of that, that generates options. And honestly, the bigger perk to have is not your college degree on paper, right? I personally think if you see something that you want to take action on, and the conversation will naturally go towards money, but it could be applied to other things, like health and happiness, what everyone probably wants to have. But the actions that you take and the willingness to take a step forward and being able to accept that calculated risk to do something,
Mm-hmm.
I think speaks a lot more, and you'll probably get rewarded more than just having your college paper. And taking those actions, it doesn't require anything. It just educate. You can have education regarding that topic. It will just probably give you more confidence, but it's not gonna make you take the action. You have to find something inside yourself to take that action. With college versus no college, the money comes up a lot just because it is a lot of people's top points that weighed into the consideration, right? And like I said, how I grew up thinking about it was college equals debt, but you make more money so you can pay off debt, and life just kind of goes, right? And it's like, hey, if you didn't go to college, your life's screwed. You're not going to find all this stuff. And that could have been more true in my parents' generation. It could have had been more true, sure. But we absolutely live in a different age. I really hope that this can reach to someone that's considering going to school or not. I mean, particularly in this case, college or not. And just really not saying that if you go to college, you're doing it wrong. You're absolutely fine.
No,
We
yeah.
just, you have to weigh the pros and cons and what you want to do. If you are one of the lucky few that have figured that out earlier in life. So
Yeah, man.
that's my 2 cents on it.
It's just I think we again are moving away from the blanket narrative that hey, yeah, you got to go to college to make money
Mhm.
or to even be well off. It's just simply it's been proven. How many times does something have to be proven to disprove the prior narrative? I don't know. It's just
I think it's gonna take probably 2, 3 generations to get rid of the
yeah. I think
narrative that you have to go to school,
yeah.
just because our parents are gonna teach our generation, and the majority of people still think college is, overall good, and it could be, right?
And then
Without
yeah.
thinking
For sure.
about the downside. Yes, it could be,
Mm-hmm.
but more and more people are gonna realize that, hey, like I did just fine not going to school,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're gonna teach their kids like, hey, like you don't have to go to school. You can if you want, right?
Yeah.
Just make their good decisions. And then more people that slaved away in a corporate job for 40 years. Not to say that that's wrong. If that's your passion, that's your why, go
Yeah.
for it. But they might be in a spot to be like, hey, like this is what I did. I was successful, but I would have done it differently.
Right.
And they're gonna try to pass on that information to their kids, and
Right.
that might take 2, 3 generation, which is gonna be another another 60 to 80 years before this narrative could even possibly be
Right.
changed,
Right.
right?
What constitutes a generation? I just don't. Is it 20 years? Like what?
I think well, I don't
You
know
know what
if
I mean?
there's
Like
like a
what's the hard?
I'm
That's
sure
like one of
there's
those
a
Google things.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure there is a number attached to it, but all I think is
Yeah.
generation is like the average age of when parents have their first kid. So if it's 30, that generation is 30 years of gap.
I got you. I think it's funny how we went through this whole podcast and we didn't even mention AI because
Oh, we're in
again,
the age.
that's probably going to change just so many, not only jobs and ways to learn. It's just, as we can see, slowly infiltrating our society, the artificial intelligence, which is a hot topic, hot take on today's day. But we didn't even go there, which is a whole nother can of worms that I'm not going to open. But it just goes to say, like, kind of what we were saying there.
Okay, I do want to
Another.
bring up a personal story on that.
Okay, yes, please,
So
please, please.
I have
Tell the
a
story.
buddy that, we sometimes play Xbox with,
Yeah.
and we're just in a group chat from high school and whatnot.
Mhm.
And he is a English professor at
Okay.
some school. It's in Utah somewhere,
Okay.
right? And he recently realized like what ChatGPT does.
Yeah.
So he heard the name before, right? And
I already know where this is going.
I was like, okay, like, hey, like, have you, like, I don't know, I forgot what random conversation we had. I was like, well, like, ChatGPT, just do it on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, like, what does it actually do? He's like, I was like, what do you mean? Like, you never used it? He's never used it before, right? And what he found out literally like a week later is that his students were literally just turning
What?
in essays, papers, 100% generated by AI. Didn't even care to edit anything.
Anything?
He never he only found out because one of his students was showed him that they're on the university like some software that checks the AI thing existed,
Check. Yeah.
and he ran like his students' papers,
Oof.
and they would be like 100% written by AI.
That was probably a rude
It,
awakening.
right? Like I used to spend how even in
Oh,
high school,
don't get
I
me
had to write
started.
like
Don't
a
get me
10
started.
page
Oh,
essay or research paper and whatever.
yeah.
That took me like
Yes.
I never did it in one sitting, but it probably took me like 8 hours of time just
Yeah.
to get everything right,
Me probably more
just
than that.
to get marked
Yes.
down,
Oh,
just to get like a 70. And people were doing this in 5 minutes. They typed in the prompt, and they're just waiting for it to generate. They
yep.
copy and paste it with their little format and turn it in. And it's
Crazy.
funny because the girl that brought up the AI software checker to my buddy who's a professor,
Used it.
her paper was like 90% AI. I'm like, what? You literally just snitched on yourself.
You just gave yourself up.
There's like a website called Rate My Professors or something like that, right? Like
Okay.
where there's like reviews on your professor.
Yeah.
He checked it. He had one review on him, right? I mean, he's a newer professor, right?
Sure,
He had
sir.
one review on it, and the student literally said, "You can use AI in his class, and you won't get caught at all. Just
And
take his class,
he hadn't
super
seen that
easy."
review.
No, first time seeing it, it was like, "Yo,
Oh
like."
man, poor guy. They
But
probably loved his class.
yeah. And then so
Oh
I
man.
personally so I have some side passion of, software coding,
Yeah.
and I actually used a lot of ChatGPT to be like,
Oh,
"Hey, give me this sort of code that does this." And it's pretty well. It does its job so well, and I just copy and paste it. Yeah, there's a little syntax stuff that you have to edit, sure, but it gets the job done,
yeah.
right? And it's crazy to even think about, but AI is still in its infant
Infant
stages,
stages, and it's
and
happening
just
so fast.
in the future, I don't even know. I cannot
I
even
can't fathom it.
fathom
I
what
can't. It's
the
almost scary to
possibility
think
of this.
about. To your point, I saw an article recently. I'll keep it quick. Is students were turning in AI generated papers, and the teacher was like grading with AI. So it was like,
Oh,
nobody's even. You're literally taking humans out of it. Like, what is the point? That completely defeats the purpose.
you
Like,
get the
you're not writing it and you're not grading it. Like, what are we doing?
right.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny at face value. I mean, it's kind of scary if you think about it, but yeah. But like, you can leverage that if you're actually using artificial intelligence to aid your learning experience, and not replace your learning experience. That's the key, I think.
All right, so I do have before we wrap it up, I do have some questions that I want you to answer. So first one, here it goes. So it's going to say, in 2024,
Mhm.
the average high schooler should go to college because.
In 2024, the average high schooler should go to college because they think that is the best way to receive education for the topic they are pursuing to learn.
Okay. Okay, let's go counter to that.
Okay.
In 2024, why should high schoolers not go to college?
In 2024, high schoolers should not go to college because they've done their research, but they can achieve their pursuit in education to the same level or better in what they're trying to learn outside of college.
Okay. No, I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And overall, I mean, I'll start it off, but overall, just to wrap it up, just as a blanket statement that we learned as growing up as kids, that hey, you should go to college.
Yeah.
Are you pro, or if you had to pick one, if you had to choose a side in today's day and age, if you have to say yes college or no college, what would you say? I will start.
Okay. Okay.
For the average person,
Hmm.
average with a caveat,
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
if you have done your research and you are speaking in financially making money, you do not have to go to college today in 2024.
If you had to pick, if a student's like you met a young individual and they were on the fence, and it was like you either have to go like blanketly, like hey, you're gonna just go to college, or you're not gonna go to college and just kind of figure it out. Like what if you had a default? That's the best way to put it. If you had to default to college or not college in today's day and age, what are you defaulting to,
The default answer should be to go to college
and why?
because of the unknowns of the audience that I'm speaking to, and just to cover the basics and taking the averages of being able to have the likely odds of making more money.
Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna throw you to the wolves without going to myself. So I would also say if I had to default to one, somebody may think this contradicts a lot of what we said.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think so, but I would, if again, this is, yeah, like a lot of research and well-intentioned thought could mitigate this. But if I had to default to one, I would also go to college because, like we stated, a lot of companies, and to maximize your opportunity, and to your point, maximize your at least initially potential to make money, because I think you said it earlier, it kind of streamlines. Like you could probably get to the same place without going to college, but I think it streamlines it. In today's day and age, how a lot of jobs look at hiring and having some type of degree, whether associate's, bachelor's, master's, PhD, what have you, they're looking for that. I think if I have to default, I would go to college. But again, I think it's shifting, and honestly, I hope personally, I hope it shifts more. And that's simply not the case. So I'm gonna stand by you on your answer and double down on that. I would also default if I had to recommend somebody.
Okay, default answer is yes, and then if you gave it your thought, the answer would be no.
Yeah.
You don't, not that you don't go to college, but you don't have to go to college.
Exactly. Well, for those who are at that stage where they're pursuing the dreaded college or not college, we certainly wish you all the best. We hope this helps. Hope this gives you food for thought. And it's just interesting to see as we all navigate society together and see what's to come. So again, this is Rebel Wisdom. I'm Julian. That's my man B. And we hope you had a good time. We hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned. Lots more to come.